18 already of the Family Health. This is episode 18 already of the Family Health Revolution podcast. And today I'll be talking about how to move from super overwhelmed to superhuman without sacrificing your active life and insatiable passions. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is sort of running on the heels of a summit that I was honored to speak for last week, or the week before. Actually, it was sort of went, I think, about 10 days, so spanning over the course of a week and a half or so, or even 2 weeks. And that was my topic for that session. And there were a lot of things that we left unsaid. So we did a little clubhouse sort of powwow about it. I recorded that, but also I wanted to release some of that information via this podcast because I really think that overwhelm is an absolute, it's a constant current through our everyday being, and I don't think that needs to be so. So I think the more we talk about it, the more tools we have and discuss, the better able we are equipped to deal with the onslaught of all the information and responsibility and confusion and feeling like disorganized and everything just coming at us right now. I think there are ways to sort that out. And I think there are ways to support you in my work to do that. So I hope you really enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Family Health Revolution podcast with Coach Carla Atherton, where she discovers, uncovers, explores, and reveals the secrets to true family health and wellness.
Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. How to move from super overwhelmed to superhuman without sacrificing your active life and insatiable passions. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this for not only this podcast, but also for the summit that I did speak for, it's one of those topics that keeps coming up in my life. And I feel like it's coming up in a lot of my clients' lives and people that come to me for help, because those people, and you who is listening, most likely feel like there is a lot coming at us, that there's a lot to sort out, a lot to organize. And the more responsibility we take on for our health, there is a chance for, that feeling of overwhelm, like, wow, this really is up to me. And my child has this XYZ diagnosis, and what do I do about it? And once you start kind of peeling off the top layer of medicalization, where it says, there's uphill for every ill, and you realize that's not true, you realize that that's not the only thing you can do, and you realize there is just like a world of healing out there. It's not only empowering, but it can also be like you're a deer in headlights, or, feeling like there's so much responsibility on you that, maybe you don't know where to start. And so I've had to work through that in my life and in my own journey. And I'm always a proponent for information and for being able to, so that you can move ahead, so you can grow, so you can actually see what you're capable of, what your children are capable of, what your family is capable of. But that doesn't mean that you burn out in the process. It doesn't mean you forget about yourself, or that you don't actually take care of yourself because you're so busy trying to reach that pinnacle of perfection. That's not what I'm talking about when I say empowered. And being overwhelmed and feeling overtaxed and feeling tired and alone and maybe the only person who has the answers or who could possibly get them, that's a really disempowered place, actually. So in that pursuit of empowerment, we can't forget perspective and the focus on the things that will actually make us truly empowered, less fearful, less confused, less disorganized, right? So, but also I think that a lot of the reason, and actually like a lot of the, I guess the driving force behind the thing, like people like myself or like you listening who really have this insatiable creative energy or curiosity or belief that there's always something you can do regardless of how dismal something may seem, or impossible, or even things that other people can't see, right? I think that part of that belief in our current society is that to be able to do that, to be able to be this high achiever, you sacrifice yourself. You work hard, you play less, you have, like these passions, but, you sacrifice those, or you put those on hold for the better good of your family. And then you're left with that question of, well, what about me? Where do I factor into my own life? How do I fill my cup? Because if I can't fill my cup, what do I have left to give? So conversely, too, we're often told that we don't have to do all of these things, right? So, you don't have to do this. You're doing this to yourself. You're running yourself into the ground. And so there's a lot of blame and shame. And, even though you're kind of expected to do everything because that is something that people have learned to expect from you, or, maybe it's a societal thing or a cultural thing. It's a gender thing. It's a gender role thing. It's a role in your family, in your community. You're a giver, you're a fixer. You're a strong person who doesn't need help. There are lots of variables, but also, then there's that expectation, but also at the same time, a lot of us women who are very, capable, independent people that just can't do more than we already do. Sometimes we get to that point where we absolutely hit the wall and say, look, something's got to give. At that point, there's a lot of blame and shame saying, well, you did this to yourself. You ran yourself into the ground. You should do less and not more. And so, my question's, always, well, do I really want to do less, or do I want to do less of the things I don't need to do? Do I need to do less of the things that are not mine to do? And so those are the questions we toyed around with and talked about in that Clubhouse chat that I published in this podcast, I think number 16, I think it was, but have a look there just to make sure that's accurate. So if you want a little deeper discussion into that, please do check that out. All right, so but what I want to talk about today is basically really how do we move that? Like, what are the tools that we actually employ? And in that one that, in that Clubhouse chat, we talked about, some of those strategies, but in my work, I started to think, well, there's got to be more that I can do to lead and to help and to guide, because, I was just at my Thai yoga massage therapist yesterday, and man, I have him actually in my acknowledgements of my book, because truly he is an angel on earth and he has mothered me. And I said in my acknowledgements, even mothers need to be mothered, right? Even healers need to be healed. And so in my work, I decided, well, maybe I need to do more of that. I'm seeing a lot of people come into my practice and they've got children they want to quote unquote fix. They want to alleviate pain. They want to reverse conditions. They want to do the impossible, where people think that it's impossible and we know that it's not. And I'm highly supportive of that, because I don't believe anything's impossible. I think everything is possible. I think we create our own reality. It doesn't mean that's an easy thing to do. And there is a way to do that depletes you. And there's a way to do that is empowering, and that literally it comes from a place of abundance rather than lack. So I'm finding myself more and more working with the moms and some dads, but a lot of moms are really more attracted to my work. So that's where I have my focus. So not you dads listening, you are more than welcome to give me a shout as well. But I'm just going to speak for these super moms here right now, just for the time being. So I thought, well, there's got to be something more to do in this whole healing space, this whole journey of healing. It's more than just the physical. And actually, it's not just more, it's actually parallel to or at the same time. So you have a physical ailment. You've got a child who has ADHD or autism. You yourself are overwhelmed, overtaxed. You have autoimmunity, you have Hashimoto's, you have fatigue. That's huge. Chronic fatigue. You have Lyme disease, mold illness, whatever that might be, mental health problems, emotional blocks and traumas. I work with all of that. And I'm noticing, though, that the emotional things like overwhelm, anxiety, depression, discontent, overwhelm. I said that twice, 3 times probably. High stress, trauma, addictions, chronic physical health conditions. I mean chronic. I don't just mean, something sudden that puts you in the hospital. I'm talking things that are ongoing, that cause constant discomfort, and people sort of just get used to feeling like crap. And they're sort of like modern day plagues right now. So I thought, well, I think there's more we can do about that, balancing, calming, empowering, right? And so I'm starting to offer sessions. And so these sessions and more of what I'm going to be talking about in this podcast from here on in as well is always going to weave in these ideas and strategies that are designed and tailored to teach both the what and the how to people of any age who want to overcome mental, physical, and emotional struggle, because those struggles are always part and parcel to our physical discomfort, our physical dis-ease, our physical ailments. There are always one thing, always. And of course, also there is the element of our environment and our family construction and our broader global community. All right, so the purpose for that and for this discussion here is so that we can become more resilient. But I don't mean so that we can take on more and battle through it. I love the warrior mama, the warrior image, the feeling like being strong and you can do anything. I love that, and I think that's extremely important. I also think parallel and, in conjunction with that, warrior, that goddess, that wise person, we can become more centered, like the sage warrior, the peaceful warrior, be able to bring it when we need to, but also stay in a state of calm most of the time. And when we do need to bring that strength, it's less of a depleting, battling where you get the tar beat out of you. And sometimes you feel a little like that, like those battle wounds can be a form of hormesis, which is a positive stress. But I'm not talking about becoming depleted. I'm talking about, yes, we need rest, all that stuff after we come through some really big things. But for a more balanced state of centeredness, of presence, of, so you can be more present for yourself in your own life, as a caregiver, for your children, your community, maybe a better boss, a more empowered boss, kind, caring, giving from a place of abundance, and partner. So, and also being able to receive. So in this way, we suffer less fear, right? And stress and discomfort, and we enjoy more presence and joy. All right, so these are some of the things that I have been studying for several years now, and I just want to share this with you because these are some techniques that can really open your world up to that state that I'm talking about. That peaceful warrior, the mama bear that just most of the time hanging out with her cubs, but can bring it when she needs to, has the strength, the wisdom, and knows when to act. But also allows others to be able to experience their own lives and their own empowerment. So we're not always taking it all on ourselves. And again, I just can't express enough how important it is to be giving from a place of abundance rather than lack. And I'm going to talk about that a lot more in the upcoming podcast, in my leadership model that I have developed for my students in my program, actually in my health coaching program. And also, talking about this model or this idea of leadership with people who are my clients in my my empowerment sessions. So there's sort of like mindfulness, stress reduction, empowerment sessions that work more on the emotional and energetic self or body, as you might put it, or layer. All right, so so we're deep diving into techniques such as, and these are things you can look up and discover on your own, or explore with me, and or just keep listening to the podcast, and we'll talk about these things kind of one at a time, sprinkle them in as much as we can. So one of those things, so EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which is and also called tapping. We've got things like behavioral and habitual reprogramming, right? Because we often work as a program, and we don't even know why we do the things we do. It's just because it's programmed into us. And so recognizing and then tripping the wire on those programs. Functional neurology is a really excellent tool as well that I like to dig into. When we're talking about new synapses connections in the brain, and neuroplasticity and healing of certain parts of the brain, that you can use specific movements and eye movements and arm movements and all kinds of things that will actually stimulate certain parts of the brain. Limbic retraining. So sometimes we get into this like stuck in fight or flight. And many people are in that state when they have like chronic conditions like hyperreactivity, for instance. So people who have chemical sensitivities or even food sensitivities, they are sensitive to mold. They walk by someone who has perfume and they just literally like have a full-on, either a panic attack, or it could be something physical like a rash, and that's all nervous system. So sometimes we need to do some retraining of that limbic system because we're in the ooga booga freak out stage. Reflex integration. Okay, so that's another really excellent modality, delving into the brain and actually brain development and integrating reflexes that cause a certain fight or flight or stress response, because they are natural ways to protect ourselves, but we don't always need them on all the time. They need to be integrated. So lots of different body movements, super simple, working people through that. Feldenkrais along the same lines. Not going to get into that too much because I've got a whole list here just to mention here for you. Vagal toning, so our vagus nerve needs to be toned, and the vagal, the information from the brain to the body, that the parts of the body that the vagus nerve actually innervates, and then back again to the brain. That highway needs to be toned and not over stimulated, but also be toned. So those things, that vagus nerve actually innervates the GI, so we can have actually stalled gastrointestinal function if we don't have good vagal tone, which is really interesting, isn't that? So stress actually can cause infection or dysbiosis because it slows down or stops the ability to digest. And so there are many other things that the vagus nerve actually innervates, but that's extremely important. And doing things like meditation and breath work and breathing techniques and emotional release and chakra work and energy medicine and intuition medicine, white light therapy, visualization, Buteyko breathing, trauma release, somatic experiencing, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, movement, yoga, applied kinesiology, using tuning forks, exploring genograms, the ancestral transformation of genome, as well as the emotional body, color therapy, holistic and emotional wellness coaching. So, talking about these things and becoming aware. These things actually tone the vagus nerve. They calm the immune system. They calm the nervous system. And actually create a state where we can have balanced emotions, balanced neurochemicals, balanced hormones, and in turn, less stress, less inflammation that is disease causing. So you see how we go right back to the source. And so next podcast, we're going to talk about extreme self-care, which is one of the tools that we can use with this whole concept of reducing stress and mindfulness and empowering yourself, right? So extreme self-care is really important. And that's what I was doing yesterday. I was at my Thai yoga massage therapist, and I asked for lots of hugs from my husband and lots of back rubbing and, all this stuff. I had an Epsom salt bath in the morning. So we can go through maybe my routine next session and or next episode, and talk a bit more about extreme self-care and some ideas for you. But also there's a couple things I just want to mention before we bust off today, is that, one of those other things that we can think about is our environment. So assessing our environments, how do we live? Where do we live? What is it, a stressful place? Is it chaos? Is it constantly messy? Those things create clutter in your mind, right? So that's another thing that we can go through. I do have a whole bunch of information I put together about raising your family vibration. I think I mentioned it in another episode, but we're going to unpack that as well at some point. And also self-assessments, becoming just aware of yourself, about what your limitations are, what your belief system is, what archetypes are you operating under. All those things are really important to explore. Maybe some inner child work, maybe some shadow work, and other modalities to break through mental and emotional blocking factors and reduce the stress that keeps you from your health. So I'm just going to talk about just really, really not surface stuff, but the stuff that's the most accessible to people would be things like meditation, breathing, and I don't mean necessarily even breath work. I mean literally just paying attention to that breath into the belly and out through the belly, and even in and another even out. So it's the same amount of time that you inhale and the same amount of time you exhale. So meditation and breathing are actually two of the most accessible and widely understood forms of stress reduction, hence leading to your personal empowerment. So trauma informed. So that's another thing I think is really important when you work with someone on something like this, is that they are informed about trauma. They are body aware. They actually encourage you to pick up on your body cues. And that's what I'm always telling my clients is watch how do you feel now? Where is that in your body? Is it up in your throat? Is it in your chest? Did you feel it release? Did you feel it tense up? Were you feeling a sense of panic? That's really important to pay attention to your body cues. And that way you know where to work on something, where it is, where it resides in your body and other things. So I don't want to get too far into that, but trauma-informed, body aware. And highly recommended, this kind of work for caregivers. And then another goal is that we have an in-depth integration of both traditional and the new psychology, as well as consciousness studies. So depending on where you want to go with this, if you want to just do stress reduction, you do your 10 minutes a day of meditation, you do some breathing, you pay attention to your body, you maybe can do some emotional freedom techniques, some tapping, things like that. That's will really act very effectively for your nervous system. Without having to go too deep into the deeper consciousness things. If you are wanting to do some kind of psychonaut work, there are other modalities, like I mentioned, that can take you further depending on what you're looking for and what you need. And so there's this real need for you to combine the things that work for you the best. And those can even be body therapies that you go to someone to do. Like I said, I go to my Thai yoga massage therapist. I've done craniosacral. I've done Reiki with people. I've done shamanism, actually, and that was a really interesting. So there are other modalities that are really beautiful, and skilled people can take you somewhere that you really didn't know you could go before. And also family constellation, inner child work, and etc. Okay, so I don't want to scare you off. Stay with me here. All right, so the objectives of an empowerment session or stress reduction or mindfulness would be to overcome stress, which is the first thing that I mentioned and that most people are really looking to do. And, fatigue actually is really, it's obviously caused by stress, overwhelm. Attain balanced mental and emotional state, break through patterns and blocks, transcend limitations, heal fully, because a lot of people are not healing fully. You go on all the supplements, you did the diet, you run, you exercise, you try to have a good attitude, and it's like, why am I not getting better? Or why is my child not getting better? Or why am I getting sicker while I'm taking care of my family? Or why am I crashing, right? What is wrong here? Something energetically, something is missing. So addressing these things allows for that full healing. Balance hormones and neurochemicals. Like I said, there are biochemical responses to a more calm, balanced state. Improve the immune system. Like I said, overcome chronic conditions, grow exponentially, which I love, and cultivate resilience and become the peaceful warrior. Okay, so those are some of my thoughts for today. And I just want to wrap up here for everybody so that we can carry on with your day. Next episode, we will be talking about extreme self-care and going through some tips and maybe some routines that you may want to incorporate into your own life, and really a deeper dive into what might be your best schedule or your best routine daily to keep you sane, you healthy, you happy, and living your best life. All right, so this podcast is sponsored by the Healthy Family Formula, which essentially means that we share our information for free. All we ask is that before you move on to the next 100 things on your to-do list for today, take what you learn, and instead of waiting until Monday, January 1st, or any other arbitrary date in the future, act on it now. Buy that new food, start that new routine, shift into that healthier habit. The little steps steadily move you past the miles you leave behind you. For more information about anything related to family health, including my new stress reduction empowerment sessions, and also go visit healthyfamilyformula.com, and do pick up my book and check out our newsletter, blog, individual and group coaching programs, and practitioner training program, again, at healthyfamilyformula.com. Make sure if you sign up for the newsletter, you whitelist us on your list, because the internet and email is super unreliable right now. I have so much trouble getting my newsletter out to my recipients who are asking for it. So make sure we're whitelisted. And you can also like our Facebook page, facebook.com/healthyfamilyformula. Thank you for listening, as it was a pleasure to spend this time with you today. May you and your family be well. Please note that Family Health Revolution podcast is not a source for diagnosis or medical treatment, but is the opinion of the host. This podcast is intended to empower people with information so they can make the best health decisions for themselves. It is up to each person to listen to their inner wisdom, consider the information they deem to be accurate and applicable to their individual situation, and consult with their trusted healthcare providers, if they so choose, when making any decisions regarding their own health or the health of their loved ones. Each person's health is their own responsibility. Thank you.